This episode is sponsored by Aquanow, the premier crypto as services provider, and sponsored by XDC Network, a layer 1 EVM compatible blockchain, revolutionizing the digital space.
The latest episode of FUMO, Future Money, with Gaurav and Ronit. Today we're going to be talking about stablecoins, and who better than Miriam, our dear friend and regional head, Middle East Africa, for Circle. Miriam, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me here.
Our pleasure.
Looking forward to the conversation.
And as ever, this episode is brought to you with the support of our sponsors, Aquanow and XDC, and supported by CFT and MFTA. Miriam, what are stablecoins? Define the terms, please. Stablecoins. Are they stable and are they a coin?
101.
Stablecoins are basically digital currencies that are pegged to a real sort of fiat value, which really makes it simple for people to understand and to use as well on a daily basis. That's probably the simplest way to describe them.
And stablecoins are based on blockchain?
They're mainly sort of used on the blockchain. This is where you go on chain. It's completely the opposite of fiat. And they were created purely to be used on the blockchain world.
So most stablecoins are linked to fiat, as you said, and they're linked to the US dollar, and we'll come back to that later. And they're based on blockchains. So let's use the example of Circle just to illustrate the point of what is a stablecoin and how does it work. So USDC, tell us about USDC. What is it and how does it work?
Yeah, perhaps I'll start by describing what does Circle do. And how we issue USDC.
Sure.
So Circle as a company is a global fintech that really makes money move at the speed of the internet. We're perhaps better known for being the issuer of USDC. So USDC is the largest regulated stablecoin in the world. And what does USDC do? It simply helps businesses and enable businesses around the world to programmatically improve their transactions and improve their operations internally. That's from a business standpoint. For end users, it allows users to really have I would say an alternative system to the banking system, and we can talk about this in more details. If you look at the unbanked, for example, the unbanked, the ability to use stable coins in combinations with digital wallets, it's a great opportunity for that community to jump to join the Web3 economy and be able to transact, whether that's spending, saving, sending. And there are many use cases that we've seen around this.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a global problem-solving, opportunity creation, value creation, cost saving, time saving on so many levels for consumers, banks, financial institutions. That's
Absolutely.
a lot that's happening simultaneously, but what's happening first? Maybe I don't know.
I don't know.
Wow.
What, do you think it was smaller, or you sound
No,
surprised
it just made me.
So digital asset Swiss Army knife.
It's unbelievable. It just made me think. Oh, do we need Visa, MasterCard anymore? Can I just issue stablecoin and...
Hang on, we're a couple of minutes into this podcast and we've already said, do you want to go into to our friends at Visa, MasterCard, we love you.
Sorry, do we need card schemes anymore?
Do we need card schemes?
Because if we're issuing a card...
I'm glad you started with that rather than banks. Do we need banks anymore?
Right? Wow, I'm going to lose friends.
I know.
Very fast.
Yeah.
But suddenly just the opportunity to create alternative rails to move money at the speed of the internet as such a statement makes me think, wow, it's opportunities there, but what's actually happening in reality is another.
But can we just double click on that point, Gaurav, about the speed of the internet?
Yeah.
I can move money to you today at the speed of the internet.
But at what cost, with what preambles to it? So today...
You and I can move money, speed of the internet, at almost no cost, zero cost, because we're both banked and we live in the UAE.
Correct.
We live in
100%.
Dubai.
Correct.
So it's a functioning
Yes, but if people are unbanked or live in different countries, or they want to work on a no third-party system in between to create a trustless...
In fact, I could probably send you money and it would arrive in your account before my bank messaged me to say the money had left my account in
But
Dubai.
at what cost and to who?
Actually,
Zero.
this is what
For me.
For me and you.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
and that's what we tend to forget.
So why do we need you, Miriam?
yes.
Because we just explained that we can move money real time to each other. I could be 12:30 a.m. discussing maths teasers with you and sending you money at the same time.
Yes.
Real time.
You could.
Maybe you, as Ronit, you don't need me as a stablecoin issuer. However,
No, we need you, Miriam.
but if you take, let's take the example of, let's say, a Filipino worker in Dubai, right? These people are sending their money home every month, right? They usually pay on average 6 to 8% to remit that money back home. They tend not to know what happens with that. It's usually managed by their families. They work for 10, 20 years and then they go back home. The sad reality is that a lot of them don't actually end up with much at the end of that. This is where stablecoins combined with digital wallets can play a very important role in really onboarding that segment to what we call the Web3 economy. What the worker can do today, if they have access to that, first of all, they're accessing the banking system or a parallel system to the banking services, which they can't usually access otherwise. And then they can then decide their future financial destiny. Why? Because they can then decide whether to send all of the salary back home or to keep part of it. They can then start planning for saving. They can potentially plan for their kids' education that way. So you're creating a whole new world that way. Not only that, if you look at a much bigger vision, if you say you take the same worker, maybe one day they don't want to work anymore, they want to become an entrepreneur, right? They save in to become an entrepreneur. Again, these tools empower them to do that. They don't have to wait for a bank to onboard them, for them to create sort of a profile so they can be accepted for loans or otherwise. That's the kind of vision that when we talk about open money, this is what we mean. It is an open system that lives on the internet that empowers everyone to compete at the global level, whether it's an individual or a business in Africa. Again, another example. If you're a small business in Africa, you're very much limited by so many things, whether that's like local currency volatility, hyperinflation, the ability to receive payment or send payments abroad and the cost associated with that. Again, empowering these businesses through the blockchain, through stablecoins and digital wallets, again, allow them to access global markets and also compete at the global level. And what does that do for these users and businesses is that it provides the ability for them to also contribute to their local economy. So if I have a business that's thriving and it's growing, what do you think is going to happen? It's not going to be a capital, it's not going to be a capital flight or people moving money and a better contributor to the economy. So that's really the big vision behind open money.
At Circle today in the Middle East and Africa, so your footprint, what are those the big use cases? Is it remittances? Is it banking the unbanked? What are like the specific use cases? And when you go to policymakers and you say, obviously you said you're regulated and that's important and that's hyper important. We'll come back to that. What's the pitch to the policymakers in these countries to say, let us in, approve us, authorize us to operate because we can do ABC for your entrepreneurs, your overseas workers? Walk us through that. And there's like how many countries in the region? Oh gosh, 70, 80 countries, right?
Yeah, so
There's
USDC is available in over 190 countries actually.
Right.
And in this specific region, I'm going to sort of divide the answer into different parts.
Yeah.
First, let's start with the regulation. When we go and speak to regulation, I think there's a misconception about stablecoins. Not all stablecoins are made equal.
Right.
And this is what really differentiates Circle from other players in the market. First, trust and transparency is very important for us as a company, right? Let's start with transparency.
Yeah.
The way Circle manages its reserves And the way we actually transparently share this publicly, so that the users know that they can literally have one-to-one. So it's $1 equals one USDC, and it's publicly available. As data.
And when you say publicly available, what do you mean?
It's on. We have a website that basically shows to the details of that.
Yeah.
We are audited by one of the big fours on a weekly and a monthly basis.
Okay.
And that data is shared regularly. We also work with some of the largest financial institutions that both manage and custody our liquidity, and to make it available for our customers to access that liquidity when needed. The second part of our strategy when it comes to transparency also is that Circle has a reserve fund, which is managed by BlackRock. It's an SEC-regulated money market fund. And that basically makes sure that we are very transparent about the cash that we hold both within the banking system as well as under our fund. So that's one way. So when we go and speak to regulators, we regularly engage and we show them how we...
So we're audited.
Yes.
It's transparent. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
We talk, again, compliance is very important. We show how we invest in compliance resources as well as tools and protocols to make sure that we are, again, protecting both the users and also making sure that there are no illicit activities on our platform. So these are the things that we can sort of like focus on when it comes to, again, we're regulated. If you look at how Circle is regulated around the globe, we're regulated in the US the same way as Stripe, Apple, and PayPal. Sorry. In Singapore, we're regulated by MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore. More recently, the latest sort of regulation we have received is MiCA in the EU. And what that means, that's a huge sort of achievement for Circle. Why? Because USDC and EURC were the first global stablecoins to be approved for circulation in the 27 countries in the EU. So that's how we engage with policymakers and we work with them regularly. We also keep constant engagement where we respond to market consultations by regulators. We sit around the table, we listen to their feedback, their reservations, sort of the way they're thinking, their perspectives, and we also share ours, right?
Yeah.
We participate in different discussions, again, either by giving feedback, and some of the feedback that we give is captured through like working groups like the IMF, the World Economic Forum. Our leaders are very much respected in this space, and I'm sure you met a couple of them already. So I think this is how Circle is positioning itself in this space.
I've had the privilege of being on panels with both Jeremy and Dante.
And they've been on our show before.
Dante has been live from SFF last year.
Absolutely,
That's
yes.
right.
It's been a year.
It's been a year.
Exactly a year, actually.
Wow. It's been a moment. So Gaurav, do we need stablecoins in this part of the world? You're a old doyen of this part of the world. I mean, what's the value add? What do you think?
Well, from my opinion, I mean, just thinking about lots of use cases as you were talking, and because we're talking about how you move money, and there are a lot of ways in which, like we talked about, you could move money from yourself to me very easily, but there are people who don't have access to those facilities to be able to do that in the first place. Not only to you and me, but amongst each other in unbanked, underserved, unfinanced.
And cross-border is the hard one.
Cross-border here, because in this region, we are a natural place and home for people to come here and work from an expatriate position. So remittance actually is one of the biggest remittance hubs in the entire world.
Yeah, second
It is
biggest,
the
right?
second biggest after the US,
because
absolutely.
from a cultural point of view, there's a lot of people who culturally support families back home,
Totally.
as opposed to working independently and creating families only.
Yeah.
So that the cultural aspect ties into why also it's not just a location and a factor, the growing part of the region.
It's a very good point that you brought there, Gaurav, and that's and I was going to get to the point of like looking at the use cases we're seeing in this region specifically. Remittances, absolutely. This is probably one of the largest outbound corridor when it comes to remittances, and that money is going to some of the largest inbound corridors, especially around sort of APAC region, right? So B2B cross-border, sometimes we assume that by having access also to the financial services or the financial system, businesses are able to transact easily. That's not always the case. It depends on the region. Again, if I pick our region, it is potentially one of the regions that has challenges, especially if we look at Africa and some parts of the Middle East. The cost associated with those transactions is prohibitive. Even the timeline, yes, it's in the UAE, we're blessed to have instant payments, very easy, right?
Yeah.
So it's cheaper, it's easier. That's not always the case in other parts of the world. In Africa, if I'm sending money from Nigeria to Ghana,
It's cross-border,
that transfer will have to bounce, transaction has to bounce between London and New York before it comes back. I could actually drive and make it and deliver the money by hand instead.
No. Anything sort of internal in Africa, particularly. I mean, you've flown all over Africa. I'm sure you've done it as well, Gaurav. I always find it funny how from the east to the west, you have to go via Brussels or Paris.
Yeah, exactly.
Why am
you go up and down.
I know you go up and down. You don't do that in Asia.
Absolutely.
Because it's like so much domestic, like in
Absolutely.
ASEAN, so much domestic connectivity.
Yeah.
In Africa, all the roads were built like out
Yeah, the
to the port, right?
infrastructures, yeah.
And then it was shipped out. And it's kind of interesting, the use case point.
We're seeing
because-
another use case actually,
Yeah.
which is very interesting, which is around sort of payroll.
Payroll. Okay.
Absolutely.
Unpack that for
So
us.
there are a lot of freelancers and small businesses, right, working for large corporations in the West, whether that's in the US, Europe, or otherwise. And those people are now wanting to be paid in stable coins, right? We're seeing more platforms doing that, more platforms being positioned just to facilitate those payments, and it has been growing for the last 18 months.
Yeah, and I think this is the interesting thing: the relevance and use cases of programmable money, access, speed, cost. I think it's going to have obvious use cases, and we've named all of them already. I think what's interesting is more than the use cases as the next phase, not to dilute the importance or scale of what's already happening and the impact it's already having on growing ecosystems, helping people, time, money. I think it's the things that haven't happened yet. And there are two parts to that.
Okay.
One is adoption.
Right.
None of this is relevant without adoption.
Yeah.
Because when all of these, all of Web3, blockchain, crypto was paper, it was speculative, it was risky, and it was all theorized. All of this has become faster enabled because of the infrastructure availability, the scaling and adoption by different institutions,
100%.
users, and people in different spaces geographically. And that brings me to what I'm talking about now in context is what I'm interested in discovering is as that infrastructure grows, use cases will show themselves. And I think the use of the technology amongst different groups, like you're talking about payroll for freelancers, is something that happened not because Circle created a product, I believe. I believe it was a problem that needed solving, and the community has activated it because previously financial institutions would have to create a product. Now products are appearing through self-consumption. So it's not because Circle said, let's do a product because our data shows freelancers need to be paid. Freelancers said, let's get paid or pay each other, and this is the way we want to consume the service. And it was so easy to do because of the new way in the technology can be programmed, the way money can be sent and be consumed without cost. Because I don't need to structure a product, add a fee here, add a service there, justify fraud, do KYC. It's all happened already. The technology is already a little bit more programmed, contract programming, trustless, as we say, audited, to allow those conversations to disappear and use cases to be adopted more. So we may even find use cases like I find today when I invest with people and groups and we are working with each other, people send me USDC as opposed to sending money into my Dubai account because it's easier for them to have that balance and do transfers for us to do things with each other.
We should now find out how much he has in his USDC.
Right, I'm very curious about that as well.
Keep oversharing, Gaurav.
I have more in crypto than I have in USDC. Sorry. For
That's
now.
okay.
For now.
Ooh,
For
which
now.
coins? Okay.
Mainly Bitcoin.
But that's
and
usually the
Ethereum.
baseline, probably when you
Yeah.
try and
Yeah.
get out.
Yeah.
Which
So this
is-
the point is, what I'm saying is different geographies, different ecosystems
100%.
will adopt the technology themselves, as opposed to
Haven't
financial
you-
institutions asking, how do we create another revenue stream?
And yeah,
Yeah, but hasn't Gaurav just described the internet era?
that's how I was just gonna say. That's the
Yeah.
beauty
Of the
about
internet, yeah.
exactly. That's the beauty about building the internet.
Right.
And if you think back to when we started I think we used the internet. It was 2% usage, probably in the early 2000. Now I don't know. Is it 70%? Something like that. I
It's
expect
everyone with a mobile phone, right?
Yeah,
If you've got a
absolutely.
mobile phone, you're online.
Absolutely.
So,
And
yeah,
what he
smartphone,
described,
sorry, yeah.
what he's described
Yeah.
is basically the promise of open money.
Yeah.
And the
What is open
blockchain.
money? Let's double click on that.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Oh.
Here we go.
So open money.
Open money. Let's get all the buzzwords going. We've had
go for
finance
that.
at the speed of the internet. So what is open
Let
money?
me throw up hashtag.
Hashtag
here.
open money.
I mean, open money is the
Yeah.
ability, again, like what we described earlier, and
Yeah.
a little bit what we touched on, is the ability to facilitate, to provide access, and the ability to manage your own money on, freely in a way that is still transparent, but also safe for both users and businesses. The ability to move between borders without having to sort of pay huge amounts of fees is building a system that is efficient, that is effective, that's also technologically advanced to meet the new digital age, right? So if you have the ability to reduce cost, improve speed of transactions, onboard people that are unable to access, deal with financial inclusion in this case, for me that's what really we mean about being open.
Go on.
Sorry, I just
No, you've got a thought.
Oh,
my
you
business
got-
hat came again.
Oh.
Sorry. So if
How many hats do you have?
6
Oh, wow.
Wow.
or 7 that I
I'm
know.
very
Okay.
curious about
Yeah,
your
what the hats
four-
are, right? Yeah.
Involved.
So anyway, with Gaurav with his business hat on,
So I'm thinking, if we looked at how Visa and MasterCard set up rails
Yeah.
to connect the world through an infrastructure for payments and
Yeah.
sending money effectively on what is a trusted network. You trust Visa, you trust MasterCard, you trust Amex.
Yeah.
If Circle is let's say a Web 3.0 version, for not trying to dilute what you're doing, in a way of
Do
setting
we
up,
still use that term, Web 3.0?
what should we call it?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
still use it.
We'll coin a term, but
We'll coin a
coming
term.
back to this point,
I call it the Web3 economy.
if you
Okay.
set up a new ecosystem which can send money from one place to another, you're doing it on Circle, which is a stable coin. And if there's another party that's just like you, like there's a Visa and a MasterCard and Amex, and they come along with you, what's the fee structure or differentiator besides after a 5 to 7 year period? Because we're going to have a normalization of this adoption because there are going to be several players. So if there's Circle plus 2 or 3 other players in the space, is it going to just be comparing fees after a point of view, or is it going to be that Circle does something else intrinsically from a route
maybe-
that
So-
makes
Another way to
people-
ask that question
Yeah.
is to look at what exists today, right?
Yeah.
There are 2 or 3 big
Sure, exactly.
stablecoins. So
But after 7
how are the
years,
different use
besides
cases?
fees, what would
I
be
think-
the differentiator for Circle?
The differentiator is the way, if you look at Circle as a company, yes, we're a stablecoin issuer, but if you look at what we're building as Web3 solutions, they're meant to empower the stablecoin network,
Okay.
right?
That would be, I'd really
Right?
love to dig on that.
So
Yeah.
when you look at the solution, so you have USDC, you have ERC, then you have programmable wallets, smart contract, cross-chain protocols. So what does that do is to enable, because we talk very often about us building the biggest stablecoin network in the world. For us to do that, we can only do it if we build that infrastructure around it, okay? Because we cannot always rely on a third party. So when you come to Circle, let's say you meant USDC is 1-to-1. going back to the fee. So we don't charge that fee because ultimately what we want is the circulation, the velocity of USDC in the network, right? So the fees, by adding these Web3 solutions on top, is that we're empowering the stable coin network, but also we're empowering the platforms building. Right, the developers building to make it easier. We're making our products very easy to use. It's almost like a plug and play model, and it's done on purpose so that you don't have to go and build everything from scratch. If you're solving a problem, going back to what you said earlier, if you're solving a financial inclusion problem or an access problem and you're building a fintech, you don't want to start coding from scratch. What you want to do, what we want to do as a company is provide you also ultimately with all the tools that will help you stack and build that solution for you. And that's where this is going to go, in my opinion. We're no longer going to have stablecoin issuers and then platforms doing. I think we're moving towards a world where we're building platforms that are contributing to an ecosystem, a Web3 economy.
Yeah.
So businesses of the previous financial generation, if I can call it that, would build businesses on charging fees for access to their network or building that security from one party
Or
to
just
another.
make money from you from laziness and
That's a different
suboptimal behavior.
I wouldn't say that, but you did. Thanks. So you
sorry.
take that off my shoulders.
Let me
I
not say
appreciate it.
laziness. I say inefficient and suboptimal
Inefficiencies,
behavior.
You guys say that, I didn't. I'm feeling much happier because I said some stuff earlier. We might edit
Yeah,
it, we
you're a
might
bank
not.
board member and stuff, so you can be careful what you say, right?
Yeah.
But,
Exactly. So
yeah.
how do you make money if you're providing a service?
How
And
do they-
traditionally
how
people
do they make
that.
money?
How do you make money? Because you're building.
They're
you're spending
licensed
money.
to print money, dude.
Go on, tell me, educate us. Not
So
everyone would.
for
be,
us as
it's
a
not
company,
obvious.
I
It's
think
not
the
obvious.
reserves.
Is it obvious?
So how do you make money,
How do you
Miriam?
make money? How do you?
Reserves is the first one, obviously,
Sure.
but we don't rely solely on reserves. That's why we're building also these Web3 solutions that are supporting network, but also we're looking at ways of monetizing this, but
Okay.
really at the fraction of the cost. This is not meaning going to a model where we're starting to charge exorbitant fees, but we're expanding sort of that revenue stream, so it's not solely relying on reserves.
So
you put 100, you buy 100 of coins, let's say USDC.
They
that
stay
means
at 100 of coins.
yeah, it's like $100 worth.
Yes.
It sits in their balance sheet, which is audited, regulated, blah blah blah, and then they put that into
The
mainly
fund, the circle
T-bills
fund,
or
T-bills, short-term T-bills, and that's how we generate our
so
revenue
off the
from the
100,
reserves.
how much would go into T-bills roughly?
About 90%,
90.
almost, yeah.
And the
how
rest
big
would
is
be
that
in
now?
bank accounts,
yeah,
and
to
so
provide
then
liquidity.
you'd get a carry on that. You get interest.
Which is great. So
Banking
big is
101.
How big is
It's publicly available, that number,
Yes,
right?
Yeah,
it
it's
should- it
publicly
is.
available. Today, I think we reached probably 35, 36 billion. in
35,
circulation,
36
so that gives
billion.
you-
So what
Wow.
do T-bills yield these days? I don't know. I have to check. I didn't check this morning.
Yeah.
I didn't open my Wall
4%.
Street Journal.
But it's definitely a
Yeah.
fresh approach of being a technology company, isn't
That's-
it? I mean, technically, they're not a bank or they're not a
30 odd
financial
billion
institution.
times X% minus the cost of employing Miriam.
Right.
Boom. That's your profits.
Negative then, right? But it's looking at creating a scalable ecosystem
100%.
first, and then looking at saying how that.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's
that's
impressive
why
as a fresh
when
take.
we say really our mission is to close the gap around financial inclusion, is to build this global stablecoin network. That's the mission. It's not just the revenue, right? Of course, as a company, we need the revenue to exist, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. None of us would
So
be here to build.
as a prediction, you're at 35 billion today in terms of reserves. At what point do you get to 300 billion?
Oof.
Because in essence, what I'm trying to
you're
plot.
putting Miriam on the
yeah,
spot.
that's
But
honest,
from
but-
a perspective of the growth of not circle, more like how you feel the whole ecosystem is moving into this space in terms of usage
I would
and,
say
and confidence
this year,
and activation.
and we all know, based on the recent acquisitions that happened, the regulations, I think this year is a very interesting year. I think we're really crossing the chasm with stable coins, right?
And this is what we talked about,
competition, sort of more
adoption.
stable, yeah.
We're crossing the
Really,
Rubicon.
yeah, and I think 2025, all the use cases we discussed, if they really become reality on a global scale,
Yeah.
Let me ask
300
you
billion
another
is-
question, not just for Circle then, right? How many other players are there in the space? What's the total size of all the people in stablecoin USD combined today? Do we know? Roughly? Just is it in the hundreds of
It's-
billions
yeah.
today?
it is.
It is, right?
It is.
So if it's in the hundreds of billions today
Yeah.
amongst, let's say, 10 players, 20 players, 30
It's
players?
very concentrated, Gaurav.
It's
Yeah,
currently
that's exactly the idea, right? That's what I'm trying to get to.
It's a
and
couple
if
of
you
players.
think about
There it is.
the number of
It's
stablecoins
like Visa,
being
MasterCard.
launched,
It's a couple of players.
This is
Yes.
exactly. I rest my case. Thank you very much.
but
This is where I'm
changing.
going.
This is changing, and that
And
is
also in the UAE, Miriam, maybe we should double
Absolutely.
click on that because there's a lot of
Absolutely.
really interesting initiatives here, right, that
Yes.
are publicly discussed
Yeah.
by policymakers. Fill us in.
if you look at how the
Yeah.
landscape is changing, we're moving from
Yeah.
the concentrated number of stablecoin issuers
Yeah.
to many more coming into the market.
Yeah.
For us, this is good news. This is actually proof that stablecoins have found a product market fit, right? Companies are realizing this is a huge market to tap into, and they want to be part of it. Right.
It's the
Which is
future.
great. Absolutely. So we're more likely to see, I mean, we're already seeing this year, we're more likely to see more acquisitions as well to sort of expand that infrastructure around the stablecoin network
That's
that we talked about.
that's a little subtle hint at the Stripe acquisition recently.
That's one.
That was just
Yeah.
announced before we went on to
Absolutely.
film this episode.
And that's a very good example of
Yeah.
how the landscape is changing.
Yeah.
This is a major payment company
Yeah.
moving into this space.
Yeah.
When you see these companies moving in, that means there is definitely a huge opportunity that needs to be leveraged, which is great. Coming back to the UAE. The UAE has taken the lead with the stablecoin framework that was issued recently by the central bank. Again, we're likely to see, in addition to the foreign stablecoins, we're seeing the local stablecoin being issued.
So what's for
This
the
is a
audience who don't know the EU as well as you do, because you've been here for a while, you've worked for
Yeah.
ADGM, right? And now you work
Yeah.
for Circle. Tell us give us the cliff notes, if you like, or the
Yeah,
cheat
so the
notes
central
on what's
bank
gonna
of the
happen.
UAE has recently issued a clear sort of framework that differentiates between sort of local stablecoins versus foreign stablecoins, which Circle would fall under. And they defined the guidelines on how these two can be differentiated and how can they circulate on around the ecosystem. For example, the local AED stablecoin can be used for payments, and I believe the requirements for a bank to issue.
What's the timing of that?
The first first AED stablecoin has already not been approved, but they received already an IPA, an in-principle approval from the
Okay.
central bank only a few days ago.
Okay. Do we know when I can walk into a shop here in the UAE and use stablecoins with
I
my
would say
wallet?
2025. There's
Right.
no reason why not, because
And what
once
will that
the
be like? Just illustrate that. So would I have it in my my WEO wallet or my Emirates MBD wallet
Absolutely.
or my
Let's
Apple
say
Pay wallet? Or
you're
how do
part
I hold a
of you're a
stablecoin?
customer of a bank.
Yeah.
That bank most banks have apps today.
Yeah.
I mean, all of them. In
Yeah.
fact, in the UAE,
Yeah.
right? It would be listed as part of your currencies.
Yeah.
Basically,
So you'd have it on your app.
on your app, and you should be able to
Yeah.
use it for payments.
And would
It should be.
Kareem Pay or Etisalat have it in their app, or how would it work?
Everyone's going to do it.
Everyone is
Everyone's
going to
gonna
use
want-
it,
yeah.
whether you're Kareem or anyone who has a mobile wallet,
Yeah,
anyone who has an app can use it.
Yeah.
And for us, this is a great thing.
I know.
You
Because
have to
is-
invest in it.
no, my kids have the app, right? They've got the Kareem app, so not a plug for Kareem there, but
But everyone has to
Yeah.
adopt it, put
Yeah.
it in there, do a financial review. And
But
audit
think about
review.
being able to
The
ping them the money.
opportunity.
It's going to be a task for technology.
Think about the
easier.
opportunity. By having these stablecoins, you're immediately moving on chain.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's also dollar stablecoins coming, right?
Well-
in the UAE.
Well, I think one of the exchanges already listed
Oh, have
a
they?
USD. I believe one of the
I'm out of
exchanges
date.
has done that
I need
last
to do my
year.
own homework.
Yeah, we have to.
I'm not sure if it was launched and
Okay.
activated properly,
Yeah.
but I know that
But the
they were
AED
working on it.
stablecoin is like central bank
It is
authorized, right? Because
yes,
it's
it
AED.
is central bank, so it would be regulated by the central
And
bank
the
and
dollar
foreign.
stablecoin would be what, VARA regulated or?
It would be on mainland, basically.
Right.
Sort of the other regulators that could be AGGM, could be VARA.
Oh, okay.
I think they will regulate
I feel
that
like
part.
we need to do a monthly
There's a whole
update just with Miriam on all of these things.
I know.
30 is like a
2025. But this is why I guess the three of us are based here, right? The rate of change.
Yeah, absolutely.
is-
adoption.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of stablecoins
Yeah.
might look at this, or foreign stablecoins might,
Yeah.
or people in probably, I would say, ecosystem stakeholders might see this as because we get asked a lot of
Yeah.
time, sort of CBDC versus stablecoins versus local versus foreign.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a great thing because for us, an AD stablecoin becomes an on-ramping mechanism,
Yeah.
it actually resolves a lot of the challenges, which
right.
we all know exist around on and off ramp. So
totally.
if anything, this is great. Again, this is building that
You're creating the ecosystem.
building,
Yeah.
going back to the open money. That's how you build the open
Yeah.
banking system and financial
Yeah.
system.
No, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're moving slow towards that and having leading payments players
Yeah.
coming into the space, having large mobile money
And we've got
players
CBDCs coming here, right?
Exactly.
I mean, retail and wholesale.
Absolutely.
So, gosh, the amount of change coming. Obviously, we've got faster payments, we've got ANI, we've got retail CBDCs, wholesale CBDCs, and then AD and dollar stablecoins happening. All here.
And you forgot to mention AI centers here as well. So
Well,
Interesting part. I think
well,
that's
with programmable money, having AI agents.
I guess Gaurav couldn't have our episode complete without mentioning AI.
Because it's actually happening here. We have one of the best competitive AI-based centers
Well,
in the entire world. We're
for
top
both-
5
Absolutely.
in the world.
For both AI and blockchain, you need smart people and lots of low-cost energy.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
And
Absolutely.
then suddenly you
Yeah.
have shifted your
Yeah.
perspective
Yeah.
to a global player that doesn't need to import anymore, but we can export something other than oil. So
Absolutely.
when someone said in their book, quoting somebody else that said, data is the new oil, I don't know whose book that is, and I don't know who the quote is.
Who said that? That's such an old quote.
I know, right?
Did someone really write a book?
I think it was a
recently and
consultant, and then
quoting
then
that?
then
That's
someone
so-
quoted the
oh, that's so
consultant.
cheesy.
The
That's so
consultant did.
cheesy.
But when someone said data is the
Did
new
you just
oil,
call me a consultant? That's
not you.
shocking.
You quoted the consultant.
I didn't. Oh yeah, I did quote the consultant.
I read your book.
My God, you
Thank
did
you,
read the book.
very much.
And,
I am a good friend.
yeah.
All of you know it.
Yeah.
He can't deny it.
I
But-
didn't know
data-
that,
data-
Reed.
but data is the new oil. Now, if
Data
we're
is the-
exporting that
data is
in
the
terms
new
of
oil.
AI, we can actually do that. And then with the way we're adopting these
But
programmable
is it really
ecosystem,
data or is it
amazing.
structured data?
Oh gosh, let's not go down the
Ooh, next
Right, probably
episode.
gonna get-
On the next episode,
data is the new
Absolutely.
oil.
we could go on, I think.
We could go on, but
Absolutely.
we're running out of time. So
And I
maybe
think
any
that's an
final.
amazing next topic.
Yeah.
Conversions of AI and crypto.
I think we'd love to have you back
We'd love
talking
that.
about just that. Yeah, what do you think?
Let's do
Well,
that.
let's do it. Let's make
Absolutely.
it a date. So,
Thank you for having me.
not at all, Miriam. Thank you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. It's
It's
always
been long
a pleasure.
overdue, and it's
I
great
know,
to have
right?
you in the room. And
Good to be with you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Great.